Welcome, everybody, to Lunch Break with the Rabbi. I know we're a little bit off schedule today, but today is Sukkot, and we are bringing it to you live from our Sukka. And I hope you join us in our Sukka tomorrow to come by and get a little snack and shake the lulav in the esrig. Our Sukka is open 24/7, so you can always come by and make a blessing in the Sukka and make a blessing on the lulav and the esrog. Amongst the many things that we do on Sukkot, today is the third day of Sukkot, the first day of Chol Hamod, which is the intermediate days of Sukkot. It is October 5th, 2020, Monday. Amongst the many things that we celebrate on Sukkot, we celebrate by eating in the Sukkah, we celebrate by taking the four kinds of the lulav, that's the palm tree, the myrtle, the willow, and the citron, and bringing them together and making the blessing. We also celebrate something called Simchas Beis HaShoeva, which is a celebration of the water libation. What is that, and what does that mean? In temple times, every time a sacrifice was brought, wine was poured on the altar together with that sacrifice, which was called the wine libation that was used at the time when bringing those sacrifices. However, on the time during Sukkot, from the from the first night of Sukkot until the seventh night of Sukkot, they would pour water on the altar. One of the reasons why pouring the water on the altar, the Talmud explains, was because water is judged at that time, and that was an expression of hoping that the victory for the water, that there should be water for the Jewish people. This was a rabbinic ordinance. It is not a biblical commandment. It was something that the rabbis have instituted as became a custom in the time of the Holy Temple. At that time as well, the Jewish people would celebrate with great celebrations. The Talmud describes that they wouldn't even sleep all night. They would just fall asleep and nap on each other's shoulders while they were dancing in the courtyard of the Holy Temple. The Talmud then goes on to describe the unbelievable type of celebration it was, what they would set up and how they would dance. For example, there were these great massive torches or lamps that they would fill with this huge amount of oil that they would light up the entire Temple Mount, which then the entire Temple Mount was so light that it says that even a woman in her courtyard in Jerusalem was able to count her barley seeds. That's how bright it was. The great scholars of the time, Talmudic scholars, would be juggling fire in celebration. So this was one extravagant event of absolute internal, inherent, and real joy that the Jewish people experienced, to the extent that the Talmud uses a terminology. One who has not experienced the joy at Simchas Beis HaShoeva has never truly experienced joy in their life. And the Talmud tells us about one episode that happened at that time. And the episode goes as follows. There were people at the time of the Second Temple who did not believe in the oral traditions. They will call the Karaites, the Tzedukim, the Baisusim, different groups of these individuals who do not believe in the oral law. And the Talmud goes on to describe that once there was such a Kohen who did not believe in the oral law. However, it was his obligation to pour the water on the water libation. And being that this was a rabbinic ordinance, he decided that he's going to do something extraordinary, which picked up the anger of the Jewish people. What he did was, he picked up his hands, and instead of pouring the water on the altar, he poured the water on his feet in the Holy Temple. As the people saw what he did, all those in attendance took their esrog, as it was Sukkot, so they had their esrog with them, and they stoned him with his esrog. Over here, we see this is an interesting story. Number one, that this Tzeduki, first of all, decided to do such a despicable act. But even more so, the very fact that the Jewish people at the time didn't allow the rabbis to adjudicate and decide what should be done with such an individual who decides to publicly dismiss the rabbinic ordinance. In fact, the Jewish people, so to speak, took the matter into their own hands, but also in a very weird way, by throwing their esrog at this individual. And the question is, what is it? Why would they do it? And over here is the message that the Tzeduki was trying to bring across and how the Jewish people responded in the descriptive story. The Tzeduki, the Karaites for that matter, believed that we shouldn't listen to the rabbis blindly. Therefore, he poured his water on the legs, saying, What are you guys? Just following blindly and following by just walking in the dark? Use your heads. Why are you just pouring water? What does it make sense? He didn't realize that everything that the Jewish people do is by tradition from one generation to the next, passing on what is the important traditions. Whether we understand it, we'll come to understand it. But if we know that this is a tradition in our family, we make sure that we don't come along and say, this is something that I don't do because I don't like it. What did the Jewish people do? How did they protest? On the contrary, they showed him, no, we're not going to wait for the rabbis to adjudicate what should be done. We know how important it is to follow these traditions. We know how important it is to say if God tells us to do something, if our rabbis tell us to do something, we follow it. Therefore, they took the matters and we are going to put a stop to it. We are the ones that are going to protest it. So absolute subservience is something which is a cardinal and principal law in Judaism. We wake up in the morning and we say, Modeh ani lefanecha. We thank God for returning our soul. We don't ask how he returned it, if he returned it, when he returned it. Subservience. The first thing that a Jew commits to is absolute subservience to Almighty God, recognizing that everything comes from God. When we have absolute subservience, then everything else follows in kind. Then we are able to have self-nullification. There's a lack of ego. Then we are able to come to appreciate faith in God. But if I think I know it all, I understand it all, I have the answers for everything, then there's no subservience, there's no appreciation, there's no recognition for a greater being, and the faith in God is diminished. Over here, the Jewish people have shown us. They have taken the esrog and thrown it at the tzeduki. What is the esrog? The esrog is symbolic of a person who observes the Torah and the mitzvahs. And they explain to this fellow, understanding and saying, listen here, you want to actually fulfill and feel fulfilled. You want to actually see what's going on and appreciate the greatness of Judaism. Subservience is what brings you to understanding and having a fulfilled appreciation with Torah and mitzvahs. Following the rules, doing what you're told. Yes, sometimes it's difficult when we don't understand it. But when do you gain appreciation? When you first follow, then you study, and then you gain true appreciation of what it is. Sukkot is this time where every single Jew comes together, regardless of our level of intellectualism. We sit in a sukkah. In a sukkah, you can have the greatest scholar and the smallest child. It doesn't make a difference what level you're at. We all sit in the same exact sukkah. Every single Jew, the greatest sinner to the righteous, most righteous person, sit together in one sukkah. The concept of unity, the concept of recognition that this is all what God has given us to do. This is a mitzvah that we all fulfill together. This comes after the days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where we work so hard and pray to God to inscribe us in the book of life. Finally, Sukkot is this time when we come to celebrate. As the Medrash says, that the Jewish people 15 days later, after they were judged and they were inscribed in the book of life, they go out into the streets holding the lulav and the esrog, saying, we were victorious, we were victorious, we know that will be inscribed and sealed in the book of life. This is what we're celebrating in Sukkot. It is the 7 days of absolute joy, inherent joy, true joy. This is our job. It's pouring water on the altar. What is the difference between water and wine? Wine is an adulter joy. It causes you to say, and it brings out your inside. But water is survival. Water is something which is necessary. Water is something which is clear and transparent. Water is there and telling us and saying, they were celebrating the pouring of the water, saying it is not the flavor necessarily, the intellectualism of the individual, but it is the absolute, every single Jew counts regardless of what he tastes like. It is the water, it's the absolute necessity that brings us all together. My friends, as we continue on in the days of Sukkot, every single day, let's make it count. Every single day, let's increase in that joy. Let's understand and appreciate the water, the substance, the subservience, the necessity of realizing absolute unity and inherent joy, something which is not made up, but something which is there automatically. It's just a matter of revealing it. And when we come into the sukkah, and when we make the blessing on the sukkah, and we make the blessing on the 4 kinds of the lulav and the esrog, we come to appreciate and see what true Jewish unity brings absolute joy. So my invitation to you is come at any time. Just let me know in advance, or I'll be there with the lulav and the esrog, so you can make a blessing every single day. We have a chance to make that blessing in creating Jewish unity. Sit in the sukkah, grab a bite. It's open anytime you wish. Tomorrow, from 5:30 to 7:30, you can come by, shake the lulav and the esrog, grab a bite, have some soup, and enjoy the festival of Sukkot. We will be celebrating Simchas Torah as well, Saturday night, celebrating with the Torah, again an expression of Jewish unity, celebrating these special milestones in our life during the year, creates an abundance of happiness for us and for the Jewish people at large. We pray and hope that everybody have a speedy recovery, those who are needed and those who are lonely. But this concept of sitting in the sukkah also brings the happiness to those who may not be able to join us. So celebrate, be happy, say l'chaim, and think about a loved one who may be alone, and call them up and wish them something that they should be happy as well. Wishing you all a good moed, a good Yom Tiv, and enjoy Moadim l'simcha, as some say. And most of all, be happy, be well, and see you tomorrow again with Lunch Break with the Rabbi. All the best and a good moed.